meeting of the Joint Legislative Audit Review Committee to order. We're going to have the same rules we always have. If you want to speak, I encourage everyone to use the raise hand feature. If I don't acknowledge you, then start waving frantically in your box. You will be called upon. Let's see here. So Senator Kaiser may be attending. Oh, and there we go. Our first order of business is we would like to acknowledge the newest member of JLARC. We're all in person. She can learn the secret handshake, but we are not in person, so that'll have to wait for another day. But Senator Liz Lovelett is the newest member of JLARC. And Senator Lovelett, did you want to make some remarks?
Oh, thank you so much, Chair Mullet. Just glad to be here. Looking forward to my first meeting and listening and learning and taking good notes. So thanks for the warm welcome.
Definitely. First action item is going to be a motion to approve the January 6, 2021 JLARC meeting minutes. And then JLARC staff will actually have to conduct a roll call of that vote. I entertain a motion?
Chair, I move that we approve the minutes.
Senator Wagner's moved.
Second.
And Senator Short is seconded. And we will have staff call the roll.
Excuse, should we do a roll call of attendance first?
Oh, let's do that.
Okay.
We'll do attendance and then we'll do the roll call of the minutes. Sorry.
Okay. This is a roll call for the June 15th, 2021 JLARC meeting. Representative Phi.
Present.
Representative Frame. Senator Hasagawa.
Here.
Representative Hoff.
Here.
Representative Kraft. Representative Lovelett.
Here.
Senator Mullet.
Here.
Representative Orcutt.
Here.
Representative Paulette.
Here.
Senator Rivers.
I see her.
Oh, there she is. Okay. Senator Saldana.
Here.
Senator Short.
Here.
Representative Stokesbury. Senator Taco.
No, Senator Taco, we had an old list there. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Senator Wegener.
Wagoner is present.
Thank you. And Senator Wilson.
Here.
So is Senator Saldana here or was that Senator Rivers with a delayed?
I spoke with Senator Saldana earlier and I don't believe she's going to make it today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I think there was some confusion there. I think that was a delayed response from
Yeah.
Senator Rivers.
Correct. And Senator Saldana confirmed she was going to be unable to attend. And it looks like we have Representative Frame now too.
Thank you.
All right, Representative
so
Frame
we
is present.
So we have 12 people in attendance.
Excellent.
And so we have a quorum.
Our JLAR batting average continues at a very high level. We will now go back to what I jumped the gun on, but it's the motion to approve the minutes as there's been a motion by Senator Wagner, a second by Senator Short. We will now call the roll to approve the January JLARC meeting.
This is the vote for the motion to approve the January 6, 2021 JLARC meeting minutes.
Oh, Senator Hasagawa has a question. 1 second. Senator Hasagawa has a question.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I haven't seen the minutes. I'm looking at the calendar event and I don't see any attachments to it or the invitation that was sent out this morning. So was it sent out some time ago?
I will let Keenan answer that.
There,
Yeah,
attached to the agenda.
Yeah, it's attached to the agenda. Senator, if you're,
Yeah, I don't see any agenda attached to the calendar event, so I don't actually know where to find it. Sorry. That's okay.
let me forward it
Progress
to,
without me. It's my bad. That's okay.
I will forward the agenda to you right now, Senator,
Thank you.
and that'll have all the attachments in it.
Okay, so we can go ahead and call the roll.
So this is the roll for the meeting minutes for January 6, 2021. Representative 5,
Aye.
Representative Frame,
Aye.
Senator Hasagawa,
Sure. Aye.
Representative Hoff,
Aye.
Representative Kraft. I'm not here. Senator Lovelet,
Aye.
Senator Mullet,
Aye.
Representative Orcutt,
Aye.
Representative Paulette,
Aye.
Senator Rivers,
Aye.
Senator Saldana is not here, I believe. Senator Short,
Aye.
Senator Wagoner,
Wagner votes aye.
thank you. Senator Wilson,
Aye.
and there are 12 ayes, 0 nays, and so the ayes have it, and the minutes are approved.
All right. The next item on the agenda is the Legislative Auditor's Annual Report. We'll turn it over to Keenan and Eric.
Thank you, Senator Mullet, and welcome to all the other committee members. It's nice to see so many of you, even though you're all on small pictures on my screen. This is the first meeting we have conducted since the end of session, and earlier this year I put out my annual report. So we just want to make sure that all of you in the public are aware that it's been out there for a while and available for everybody to see. And of course, it's a document that kind of speaks to the larger picture of what the committee does and the staff do to support you in terms of oversight and evaluation of government programs. And we won't force you to walk through the entire report, but there were a couple new items that we categorized some stuff this year related to the recommendations. I was going to have Eric briefly point those out for the benefit of you and the viewing public, and then see if you have any questions.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Eric Thomas, staff of the committee. And hopefully I'm sharing my screen with you right now. So for the annual report this year, we sought to make JLARC's work a bit more accessible and tried a new approach to reporting the office's impact. We reviewed the staff recommendations from the past 4 years and assigned them to 5 broad categories. It includes improving service delivery, improving agency reporting and communication, improving cost effectiveness and resource use, improving legislative oversight, and improving program management. We have each of these recommendations, the responsible agencies, category, and implementation status under the tab Impacts and Awards, so you can see exactly which of these recommendations fit into which buckets. Again, our goal was to try and make the results of JLARC's work more meaningful and accessible to a broader audience. With that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Eric or Keenan? And when it's in the screen share mode, it's hard for me to see everybody's questions, but now I am not seeing any. So I think with that, we will move on to the next action item, which is the 2021-23 work plan. I think we have Keenan, Valerie, and Eric.
Great, thanks again, Mr. Chair. And we've got our new work plan that represents additions that are related to new mandates, and one committee-sponsored suggestion that the executive committee has brought forward to the full committee for adding to the work plan. And what we have, the way we formatted this is, there were lots of mandates that were from prior sessions. So we've flagged with the yellow highlighting new items that are on the work plan related to new action. So I thought we just hit the highlighted items just real briefly. And obviously, feel free to jump in with any questions along the way. The first item is, this isn't a specific study, but there was a bill, Senate Bill 5405, which was sponsored by Senator Hasegawa. And there were two components to that relate to JLARC's work. The first was this first item we're flagging here relative to a directive to incorporate racial equity analyses into future performance audits that are assigned to the committee. And the idea here, and I'm sure Senator Hasegawa could jump in with the chair's consent to add any thoughts he had on it as well, but the big picture here was to consider on other mandates where we get assignment, usually they're really specific focused study scopes that are provided to us in other bills or in budget provisos. And the directive in the legislation is to consider whether there's a racial equity analysis that would be appropriate given that other mandate, and bring that forward into the work. So this is something that's definitely going to take some time to plan through how to do it. The topic is complicated, but also the concept of these aspects of analysis that might not be in the original mandates, but now there's this other mandate that kind of interfaces with the scope, is going to require us to, have some more process with the committee to make sure everybody understands when we think there is an analysis that's appropriate to bring into a study, and when we think that perhaps it might not apply in some instances. And again, we'll request your patience as we develop that process, because we want to make sure it's as well thought through and as deliberate as our other work, and we want to make sure it's fully transparent to the committee that they know when this is coming into play. And no questions on that. We'll start moving through the other items on the work plan. Oh, there looks like we do have a question, Senator.
Oh, once again, I can't see. It's hard when we're in the shared screen mode for me to see.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm keeping an eye on it too.
Senator
Short.
Short has the question. Oh, Representative Frame.
And Senator Short has a question also.
Oh, and Senator Short. Okay, Senator Short and then Representative Frame.
So Keenan, I appreciate the lead in on that, and thank you, Mr. Chair. So are we going to have considerable ability, once you get into kind of what you think is going to be the standard for this kind of analysis and the different metrics, are we going to have a chance to understand that fully and weigh in on that?
Yeah, that's definitely our intent. I know you defer to us heavily to design the scope and evaluation questions consistent with the underlying mandate, but this brings in another dimension of decision making on that we're going to make sure we're having your discussion and involvement in before we say that's the final version that we're going to move forward with. And it will, not only is that going to involve that decision there, but these are our preliminary research on this topic is, it's a complicated area to analyze. It's not a simple one-size-fits-all type of analysis, because all of them are going to be dependent on the individual programs and the activities that we're studying. One example that we've discussed with the executive committee for as a idea to reflect on is, we recently did a study on the Washington State Patrol vehicle replacement model, and it was extremely focused on the assignment to us. Are they replacing vehicles at the appropriate mileage to minimize the life cycle costs of the pursuit vehicles in the fleet inventory? That might be one that maybe we would have made a determination if this assignment was in place at the time, that perhaps that particular one may not have a germane racial equity question to that scope that was assigned to us. But that's just an example of each of these. We're going to have to think through how it applies, and we'll be having a discussion with the committee about them.
Excellent. Representative Frame.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple questions. One, Keenan, I appreciate the kind of the request for patience and totally get that. I'm curious about timing. If there is a mandate in the legislation for when we would see sort of the draft approach on this, or if you've set an internal deadline for yourself. That's one question. The second question is, this is, I appreciate the comment that this is hard and complicated, but there's also experts in this field that exist out in the world. And so I'm curious if you all are planning to hire folks internally or use consultants that have a racial equity, DEI analysis background. You don't have to make this stuff up from scratch. So can you shed a little light there?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. There's not a specific timeline in the study, but I think the general approach is we aren't going to go backwards on studies we've already started. If we already have a study underway, we've already dedicated workload to that and made our available capacity for other studies based on those assumptions. So previous studies that have commenced, we're going to probably be setting those aside and not going back to revisit the scope. We do anticipate, we're thinking through the timing exactly now, but we do anticipate some kind of briefing report in general about the topic that we're going to bring in front of the committee in the next few months-ish kind of time period to talk a bit more about the approach. So there'll be another avenue to probably shed a little bit more light on that. I think it's a really good point about the existence of other experts, and we've already started some conversations with other folks in town that do a lot of work on this to get some thoughts from them on that as well. And so we definitely are going to be probably needing assistance, and we'll definitely take advantage of folks that have swum in these waters much more than we have recently. Those commensurate costs may be involved with bringing experts on, so it's going to be another consideration when we get into some of these is having some conversations with the committee too about whether these can be done within current resources or not. As an example, we have, for instance, I recently was speaking with the Office of Minority and Women Business Enterprises, who works a lot on disparity analyses in contracting, and they hooked me up with the recent disparity study that actually, I believe it was Department of Enterprise Services that managed. And it looks like a very good, rigorous, well-researched and well thought through study, not cheap. The contracting cost on that was about $1 million, not including state staff and agency support to it. So, but yes, there are many opportunities available there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Paulette.
Thank you. I think I was somewhat anticipating Representative Frame's question. I want to share a discussion that we just had in the executive committee that, as Keenan has said, there are other agencies that do this and have very clear criteria. And the one that I think is a very good model for us, that is the health impact reviews done for legislation by the Board of Health. And they have a very firm screening model, for example, using a logic model that looks at, is there research that would point to whether or not there would be a disparate impact from legislation on health outcomes, which can be applied, the same criteria could be applied to any topic in terms of the strength of evidence. And we need to be able to say, there's a very clear screening criteria for whether or not we proceeded with an analysis. And it is open, available, transparent, accountable, that anyone can look at and say, the logic model was applied the same way to every single JLARC review. And if there is reason to believe that there is evidence that might point to a disparate outcome or current impact that might be addressed, then it proceeds, and they have very clear criteria for then evaluating disparate impacts based on the strength of evidence found in the literature review and interviews. And I think that's the type of model we all want to have, is something that is very clear, transparent. And, HIRs are done in a 10-day window, and they are nationally recognized. So I think we can do this without having to replicate, a $10 million study for each one of our studies. If we have a very strong model. And I hope that that's what we'll be putting together and sharing with everyone to review the screening criteria and then the strength of evidence that JLARC uses to evaluate.
Excellent. I don't see any other questions. I think, Keenan, you can proceed.
Great. Oh, looks like there,
well,
looks like Senator
no, no,
Hasagawa.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be late to the show and getting my hand up. I have to find these things. Yeah, I'm really excited about the implementation of this. I think it could be really game changing in the long term and how our state approaches equity or the lack of it. I think the key for the JLARC is to just keep open lines of communication with a lot of the agencies that already either have mandated self-introspection on their policies or that are mandated with looking from the outside into the agencies like the Office of Equity and the Ethnic Commissions and the Office of Women and Minority Business Enterprises, that sort of thing. Just, having good communication with them as you design the study and then get feedback on the study design. I think they should be able to absorb a lot of the cost because it's within their missions to actually do this kind of work to begin with. And so that could be a cost saving measure for the JLARC itself. So just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Excellent. Okay. Go ahead, Keenan.
And I'm helping monitor for questions. I don't see any other hands raised, so we will move on to the other parts of the work plan. We're seeking a 1-month delay on the School Employees Benefits Board coverage study, and that's mostly around giving a little more opportunity to help clean the data that we're getting from all the school districts, because it is taking a bit of work to do that, and I think this will significantly prove the reliability of that if we just have a small delay to put a little more time to that.
The committee should know we are getting like 60% of the school districts are responding.
Yeah, at least 60, and if we're hoping to get even more.
So we'll have a good statistical valid study. When it's
we'll have a pretty good group of districts reporting in. Then the next item down, this is one where Senator Mullet and the executive committee members may want to jump into. In Senator Hasagawa's Bill 5405 that gave us the broader mandate for racial equity analyses, there's also one specific focused study that was in that bill, and that was looking at the racial equity impacts of pandemic related limitations to in-person K-12 instruction. And that portion of the bill got vetoed by the governor. And this is one that the executive committee met and discussed, and they would like to add that back to the work plan for JLARC under your own authority, because you have the ability to, you have the responsibility and the independent authority of setting the work plan. And that veto did not remove any resources. So it's not like we're in the hole by adding this back in. And I'll leave that, Senator Mullet, to you if you want to add anything else.
Well, yeah, this was part of Senator Hasagawa's bill that passed. We thought it was an important piece, and JLARC is the Legislative Audit Review Committee. It's not OFM. I mean, this is how we gather information that helps us make our decisions. And so we think everything related to JLARC should be decided by the committee, the JLARC committee, not people outside our committee. Senator Hasagawa.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I support the executive committee's effort to move forward on this piece. For similar reasons to what happened with the the climate bill, where the governor vetoed a portion of it. But in doing so, he actually unraveled the bipartisan, or I shouldn't say bipartisan, maybe it was, I don't know, but the overall agreement that got the bill, the votes to pass. And this was a key component of getting bipartisan participation actually for 5405. And so I think for the legislature to uphold its end of that bargain to get to that agreement I think we should move forward with it. So thanks.
Excellent. Go ahead, Keenan.
And then in the transportation budget, there were 2 transportation focused assignments. The first is looking at the contracting process for the hybrid electric ferries design build contract. And the second is looking at the leasing of state-owned land and airspace to Regional Transit Authority. 2 very technically focused studies. And that's the vehicle they came through. And of course, I'm looking to see if Representative Fye wanted to say anything or not.
Go ahead, Representative Fye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So with respect to the first, these are both, while they're technical problems, technical issues, or could be defined as technical issues, they're really very important ones. In the case of the ferries, we're working on electrification of the ferries, and we want to make sure that the contracting is done correctly, that there are safeguards, because this is a design, not only a design build, but it's a sole source contract as well. And then in the case of the leasing of airspace, as Sound Transit in particular moves south along I-5, building out its system, its light rail system, we want to be sure that we're looking at both the state's interests and the region's interest in making sure that we can cost effectively utilize that airspace, and that the 2 parties, both the state and Sound Transit, are doing the right kind of evaluation about what the appropriate charges are for the use of that airspace.
Excellent. Okay, Keenan.
Great. And then you'll see on that second page, if the staff can page down a little bit there at the top, there's a study of the Department of Natural Resources long-term forest health planning and sustainable harvest approach. That was in House Bill 1168, which was the big funding bill, or the fire suppression related funding bill. This was just one piece of that very larger, more comprehensive policy bill to have us look at that, those calculations and the assumptions that go into that planning process. And then you'll see down further in the, there we go, funding of state. We start getting out further in the years, obviously, from these studies, because these all go chronologically in the documents. So the funding of the state implementation of the National 988 system. This is the crisis response system that that the state set up, related to a federal effort for all states to do this. And then we have 2 studies that were previously mandated, and we worked through some discussions with the executive committee related to some pandemic-related delays on them that probably makes sense to push the dates out. The first is Breakfast After the Bell, and that's because the program was kind of put on hold when students weren't being in class, and the future delivery of that program is kind of up in the air about how it's going to get restructured. So we thought it would make sense to push the date out, so we didn't evaluate in the middle of changes. And kind of similarly, but potentially a little bit longer time frame, the impact of tourism marketing with the significant impacts to the tourism industry. The marketing effort kind of slowed down and is being rethought, and there's a lot of discussion about how long it's going to take for the industry to recover. And we thought giving enough time to make sure we're not in the middle of the recovery when we do our analysis would be helpful. And then finally, in 2 of the big climate related bills, the clean fuel standards and the cap and investment programs that passed this session. In both of those, there is a JLARC study that is out there quite a ways to 2030, looking into a lot of the overall objectives of the program, about how they're achieving some of the goals for greenhouse gas reduction emissions and environmental issues. Again, that's all out there ways, but get on your radar screen. And
I think
that's the ads.
Yeah, and for the tourism one, obviously that was hard because I know we want data to understand how our tourism dollars are working, but I think the general sense, the executive committee, is it was just too hard, too much turmoil in the tourism space right now. Because you would, if you're going to have a 25 study, you're really going to be going out and asking questions in the next year or two to try to understand what's happening. And so I know it's not ideal, but it should give us information that, you know, completely removes us from the misery that the tourism industry is currently going through. And obviously this last session, we put another, I think, $12 million into tourism. So it's going to have a little bit more teeth to it as well going forward. So, any questions on the work plan? We would need a motion. I would entertain a motion to adopt the 21-23 work plan. Oh, and welcome, Senator Kaiser is here for the portion of this that covers workers' comp. Excellent. Representative Orcutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to approve the work plan as presented.
There's been a motion. Is there a second? And there is a second. With that, we'll have staff call the roll.
This vote is for the motion to approve the 2021-23 work plan. Representative Fye,
Aye.
Representative Frame,
Aye.
Senator Hasagawa,
Aye.
Representative Hoff,
Aye.
Representative Kraft is still not here, I believe. Senator Lovelet,
Aye.
Senator Mullet,
Aye.
Representative Orcutt,
Aye.
Representative Paulette,
Aye.
Senator Rivers,
Aye.
Senator Short.
Aye.
I should say Senator Saldana in case she came. I don't think she's here. Okay. Representative Stokesbury, Senator Wagoner,
Wagoner votes aye.
Senator Wilson.
Aye.
We have 12 ayes, 0 nays, and so the ayes have it, and the motion to approve the 2021-23 work plan is approved.
All right. Excellent. That's actually one of the more important pieces of business this committee achieves. So that's a big deal. So that's excellent. So going on for the action item is approved distribution of workers' compensation claims management for state funded claims proposed final report. I think we're going to have Jennifer and Rebecca from JLARC staff do the final report. We will then have Victoria Kennedy from LNI is here who will make her remarks. And as per usual, just raise your hands if you have questions and we'll ask them as we go.
Well, great. Good morning, Chair Mullet and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Sulzer, and I'm joined by my colleague, Rebecca Connolly. We're staff to the committee and here to present our proposed final report on workers' compensation claim management for state-funded claims. As a reminder, we presented our preliminary report back in January, and so this will be an abbreviated version of that presentation. This follow-up study reviews how the Department of Labor and Industries, or LNI as we'll refer to them, addressed recommendations made by the legislative auditor back in 2016. And the conclusion for this study is that although LNI took steps to improve processes for state-funded workers' compensation claims, the 2016 recommendations remain partially implemented. However, some return to work measures have improved since 2014. This report issues no new recommendations because the legislative auditor asserts that the 2016 recommendations remain valid for helping to improve return to work outcomes. So back in 2016, JLARC conducted an audit of LNI's workers' compensation system. And at that time, we found that LNI was not following some claim management best practices that could help improve workers' prompt and safe return to work. The legislative auditor recommended that LNI implement these best practices, and LNI concurred. So then in 2019, JLARC directed us to review LNI's implementation of those recommendations that address early phone contact, claim planning and documentation, and predictive analytics. And specifically, our focus for this follow-up was on LNI's claim management of time loss claims that are covered by the state fund. Our presentation today has two parts. First, I will address LNI's progress in implementing these recommendations. And then after that, Rebecca will address the changes in return to work measures. So the first recommendation we followed up on was that LNI develop a plan to contact injured workers and their employers within 1 to 2 business days after receiving a time loss claim. And time loss claims are claims where an injured worker is away from their job for 3 or more days. And this recommendation was made back in 2016 because making contact within 1 to 2 days on these time loss claims is an industry best practice. LNI concurred with this recommendation and has partially implemented it. And we say that because despite the changes they made to their standards, technology, and training for early phone contact, we found that few employers or workers receive calls within 2 business days of the claim being assigned to staff. We also found that LNI does not measure whether calls are made within 2 days of claim assignment. Instead, LNI measures timeliness based on whether a call was made 3 days before or 3 days after the first payment of time loss benefits, which tends to occur later in the process. So what we ended up doing is we asked LNI to provide us with call data for time loss claims from October 2019 through April 2020. And we reviewed the 7 months of data and found that LNI made actual contact with 4% of workers and 22% of employers within 2 days of claim assignment. They also attempted to call but did not make actual contact with another 2% of workers and 20% of employers within that same time frame. And while we found that LNI was not making calls within 2 days of claim assignment, we did see in their data that LNI called or attempted to call an additional 58% of workers and 5% of employers 3 or more days after the claim was assigned to staff. And as noted in our report, there was no call data available for the remaining claims. So moving on to the second recommendation, claim management planning and file documentation are also industry best practices. The 2016 JLARC report noted that only 15% of claim files reviewed had documented plans and actions taken by claims managers. As a result, the legislative auditor recommended that LNI institute claim management planning and standardize claim documentation. Again, LNI concurred with this recommendation. And LNI's approach to implementing this recommendation was that it revised its computer system to provide a template for documenting claim activities. And then it also trained its claim managers on how to use that template to document their actions. And this recommendation remains partially implemented because despite the changes LNI made, the agency does not routinely verify whether claim planning and file documentation has improved across the claims management division. And lastly, the third recommendation from 2016 involved the use of predictive analytics. Essentially, that's computer programs that use data to support decision-making. And an example of this would include using data and machine learning to identify claim characteristics that will tell the computer what type of claim it is and the complexity of the claim so that it could be routed and prioritized based on those characteristics. And LNI reported that it doesn't plan to develop these new predictive models to assist with this type of case workload and prioritization until a new computer system is in place. And I believe back in January, LNI reported that Their current computer system is over 40 years old, and they are in the process of upgrading it, which they anticipate will be completed by the year 2029.
So the recommendations that were made in 2016 were intended to improve return to work. That's a primary goal of workers' compensation and claims management. Over the next few slides, I will go over some of the measures and indicators that L&I reports to the Workers' Compensation Advisory Committee. That committee includes representatives from business, organized labor, self-insured employers, and others. And its statutory purpose is to advise and assist L&I on issues related to workers' compensation. Based on our reviews of these measures, we found that some have improved since 2014. So the first measure we'll look at is return to work within 9 months. For this measure, return to work means that the person received wages at least one time within 9 months of filing a claim. As you can see on the chart, the rolling average increased from 88% to 90% from 2014 to 2019. Now,
Rebecca, can I ask, do we know, compared to other states, do we have any sense of where we fall in that 88 to 90% number? Or is that just something that did that ever come up in your guys' analysis? Oh, and then I see Senator Kaiser has a question after me.
We did not compare to other states in this follow-up. I could see if there's data available, or it might be something that L&I could speak to.
Okay, we can wait for Victoria. Senator Kaiser, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Mullet. I'm wondering, is this measure all claims or only time loss claims?
This is all injured workers.
Okay.
This is the next, it's a great question. The next measure we'll look at is only time loss,
okay,
but this one is all claims. So since many factors do impact return to work, it is unclear how much L&I's efforts contributed to this change. That said, L&I has taken steps to improve return to work. For example, it now refers some workers to private vocational counselors, and they're doing that sooner in the claim process than they did before. And this change has improved return to work outcomes for those who participate, and those statistics are part of our report, but it is improving their ability to return to work. So the next measure we looked at is called durable employment. And this measure looks at whether the people who went back to work have stayed employed for a year. And the change between 2014 and 2019 varies based on whether the workers based on when the worker initially went back to work. And essentially, the faster the worker returns to work after an injury, the more likely they are to stay at work for that year. And then the third measure that we looked at is that L&I reports. It shows the opposite of that durable employment outcome, and it is the workers who continue to receive time loss benefits for a year or more. And L&I aims to decrease this percentage, and from 2014 to 2019, it did decrease from an annual average of 4.2% down to 3.3%. So to recap, although L&I took steps to improve its processes, the 2016 recommendations remain partially implemented. This is the last year of planned recommendation follow-up by JLARC staff. The legislative auditor, as Jen mentioned, is issuing no new recommendations and asserts that the 2016 recommendations remain consistent with best practices and valid for helping to improve return to work outcomes. And while we did not issue new recommendations, we did give L&I the opportunity to respond to our report. Their response is attached to the final report, and it highlights other actions that the agency's taken to implement the recommendations. In turn, the legislative auditor provided an additional comment that is also in the report, and that clarifies why we focused on these 3 recommendations and why we believe that they are still relevant today. So this concludes our presentation. Our contact information is here. We're happy to answer any other questions. And as we've noted, Vicki Kennedy from L&I also is in attendance and can answer questions.
Are there any questions for staff before Ms. Kennedy comes up? All right, Vicki, it's all you. Oh, wait, Senator Osgood has a question. Sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I was, what caught my attention was this slide on predictive analytics. And I don't know if JLARC is actually aware that there's a problem with how AI is implemented in many respects, as having disparate impacts on how it analyzes and answers questions, that sort of thing, with embedded, how would we should say, biased code and biased data. So what we did, as a legislature did, was we put a budget proviso in this year to do a study on that. It's going to be going forward this interim, but I wanted to get it on L&I's and JLARC's radar screen that as you implement these predictive analytics, I guess they're focused on claim management processes, but to also look at the equity impacts that will be mandated under 5405 into these, this type of an analysis to see if there is embedded underlying institutionally racist practices within how these analytics are being conducted through artificial intelligence. Just wanted to put that on your radar screen so you're aware that this may be coming down the pike. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Okay. Go ahead, Mrs. Kennedy. Go ahead.
Thank you, Senator Mullet and members of the committee. And I thank you both for this opportunity and also for the work of you and your staff during this important engagement. Lots of conversations and interactions with staff during this multi-year effort. The 2015 consultants report and then the 2016 JLARC recommendations really provided us with independent input and validation for some very important changes in how we work with our customers that we were either in the process of implementing or have since implemented. And these changes have really led to some significant improvements in worker outcomes and as a result related cost savings to employers and to our system, frankly. And while the staff report that Jennifer and Rebecca just provided outlines a bit of those positive impacts, I want to provide you also with some feedback that we believe more fully captures our successful adoption of some of the recommendations in the 2015 report. I'm only going to focus on a couple of areas, but I'm happy to take any questions about any of the elements that you might be more interested in learning about. You have L&I's more detailed response, so I'm just going to focus today on 2 particular areas: the timeliness in contacting employers and workers, and our success in helping injured workers return to work. As Jennifer mentioned, the original report recommended that we make contact with the injured worker and employer within 2 business days after receiving a time loss claim. And while today's report indicates this recommendation is partially implemented, from our perspective, we have successfully completed the work. So I'd like to outline for you why. As we proceeded with implementation, we adjusted our approach to align with some comments that were included in the consultant's report that indicated we should implement strategies for separating claims based on the level of contact that may be needed. This really can be particularly important from our perspective in order to have meaningful calls with particularly workers, and also allowing us to use our limited resources and staff energy on those that are most at risk of long-term time off work and ultimately disability as a result. So what does this mean for putting changes in place? Well, for employers, staff attempt to talk with them within 24 hours of when a lost time claim is received by the particular employer policy account manager. So this is after the claim comes in the door and has gone through its initiation, which happens in the first day or two, and then arrives on the employer account manager's desk. They make that attempt within 24 hours, as I said, which lets them quickly give the employer information about available return to work assistance and steps they can help to control claim costs and future injuries. According to our data, which is measured from when that employer services staff member receives the claim, they have made this attempt within 24 hours in 99% of the cases, successfully reaching the employer about 50% of the time. And we're working to provide a performance measure to our staff that is something within their control. That's why it's so important that we measure from the point that it lands on their desk. For workers, our claim managers attempt to call prior to or within 3 days of the first payment of time loss benefits.
Mrs. Kennedy, can I ask, what's that normal, like what's the delta there between within 3 days of the first payment of time loss benefits and then the one up above where within 24 hours of the claim being filed? Like what's the normal time gap between those two events?
It's going to vary a lot by claim, Senator. The employer call on any lost time claim is happening within 24 hours. Now that is a claim that has not yet had a time loss payment, but has indications that it is likely to mean time off work. The reason that we're measuring for workers that call prior to or within 3 days of the first payment of time loss, and I don't want to make that sound as though no conversation is happening with the worker, but this is what we call a first call to begin to recognize the worker's barriers to return to work. And that's where we have system measures in place to monitor that. Employers, for example, in about 20% of our claims are keeping workers on salary. So the worker is not yet receiving time loss benefits, and that we anticipate that there's engagement between the employer and worker aimed at return to work. That's why it's important that the claim manager be aware when a worker is moving into time loss, because now we have a new consideration, a new potential barrier to that return to work.
Is there like a rough estimate? Is it like 1 week, or is it 1 month, or is it 2 weeks? Like what? I know it's not exact. I know it varies by a lot, but I'm just trying to get a sense of what's the rough.
It does vary by a lot, as you mentioned. Some claims lack time loss for even several months before they actually have a time loss entitlement. But if I recall the data correctly, and I can certainly double check this, so it's one of those things where it's dangerous to trust your memory, but I believe it is around 20 to 25 days.
Okay, that's helpful. Okay.
So as I was mentioning, our measure or our focus on when we call the workers is important because they are not always entitled to wage replacement benefits for several days or even weeks after the injury. I gave the example of a worker who might be kept on salary. Another common example is a worker who continues to work pending a hernia surgery. And so there's not a time loss conversation yet that may be appropriate. When we use this measure, our claim management staff attempted or reached 65% of workers within the expected time frame. 65% is certainly something we can do better on, but I wanted to give you that data. In fact, interestingly, during the pandemic, their data has actually improved. as they're teleworking from home. Couldn't tell you why, but they certainly have not reduced their performance in this area. It's actually improved. Also, when we're making these calls, because we think it's important that it is the right call at the right time, our claim managers are now taught a tiered method for conversations to ensure that their engagement with the worker is different from those most at risk of long-term disability and therefore most likely to need additional interventions or services. If we find that in that first call, the worker says, I'm going back to work on Monday, already arranged it with my employer, we're talking, then that's a fairly light touch. If the worker says, I haven't talked to my employer, I haven't heard from them, I'm scared that I'll never go back to work, I don't see a positive future here, those are big red flags for a claim manager to really escalate that case and provide some additional interventions to the worker.
Can I ask, like, how, without the phone call, how do you know which category the employee, I mean, is going to fall into, I guess? Because you just described two very different things, but wouldn't the phone call unearth like that information in a timely fashion?
Yeah, that's exactly the point, Senator Mullet. And that's part of why that conversation takes place as the worker becomes entitled to time loss benefits. So rather than having a conversation that might unearth an employer relationship issue when a worker is being kept on salary by their employer, you're going to get a different story than you may get when the employer says, I'm not keeping you on salary anymore. I don't have any light duty work to offer you. Now we've got a case that requires that kind of escalation where the conversation a claim manager may have had at, say, that third day post-injury is entirely different from that worker's perspective because their employer is paying their wages and they're talking about light duty work. And so it's really intended to get those necessary escalations at that right time in the claim. And some of this, of course, will happen in a single first call. Some of them will happen over multiple calls. How much can a worker express and take on in that first call? How much does a claim manager need to explain the process to them and then follow up with an additional call?
Senator Wilson has a question.
Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit concerned about the opportunity when you decide to escalate or not. There's no conversation, sorry for the dog in the background. There's no escalation there if the employer continues to pay the employee. So you said yourself that there were times where it could be up to 2 months. So what's happening in between times if you're not talking to the employee because they're still being paid by the employer and trying to find out what's going on? Because this is, time is money and the employer is still continuing to pay this person. It seems like there needs to be a little bit more fairness, I guess, because just because the employer continues to pay, LNI is not so concerned, is kind of what I'm gathering here. So could you expand on that a little bit?
I could do my best, recognizing that each claim presents its own set of facts. And typically, employers keep a worker on salary because they see it as a way to reduce their workers' compensation claim costs. And it should also be incentivizing them to be working on a return to work plan, a return to work option for this worker. And remember that in that first call with the employer, that employer account manager is offering them return to work assistance, someone to help them bridge that gap and bring a worker back to work. Where we see kept on salary even more commonly, so twice the average, if you will, are those employers that are part of our retrospective rating program. And if you're in retro, your aim is to improve your return to work outcomes and reduce your claim costs, thereby receiving part of your workers' compensation premium back through an adjustment. Most of that takes place through large organizations, often connected to trade associations. So the Hospitality Association for one, the Associated General Contractors would be another. And what those organizations do is generally provide their employer members with assistance in bringing a worker back to work. They help them through the claims management process. And one of the things that we want to do is avoid a lot of redundant services and yet complement the services that might be provided through things like the retro organization. Claim managers do send communications to to workers that are being kept on salary so that they are aware of who to reach out to if there's a problem with that. But it's an attempt to complement resources rather than potentially overlap, crash into them, if you will. And we're anticipating those early employer calls will help us recognize an employer who thinks they should keep a worker on salary but doesn't know what to do after that. And frankly, employers should use some discretion in when they keep a worker on salary. It's not necessarily cost effective unless you really are focused on a return to work effort and response. So hopefully that, in general, Senator, gave you an answer to some of your questions.
So can I ask, does L&I then, if you're in a retro program, do they have a different response plan for folks in a retro program they do in the?
I don't know that I call it a response plan, but what we have done is made it very clear to the retro programs. This gets a little bit, frankly, into the idea of some of the predictive analytics, because we do use it to a degree, but it's a pretty manual process. And I was going to mention in my comments that we have several triggers that will push a claim in front of a claim manager, not just for first calls, but thinking about our return to work interventions. And I'll get into that, the return to work measures and that in a moment. But when it comes to whether or not L&I will engage a vocational rehabilitation counselor from the private sector for what we now call vocational recovery services, in cases of a retrospective rating employer, what we've let the various retro groups know is if they are providing return to work services, if they are engaging a worker and an employer to identify an appropriate job, they need to be documenting our claim file with that information. Let us know what's happening. Let us know, how frequently you're talking to people, what your plan is for return to work. Because if that's happening and we see it, then we not necessarily have a reason then to engage a private sector vocational counselor. If they don't do that, then our concern is a worker is sort of falling off the radar here a bit, and that gives a claim manager a reason to make a referral for vocational recovery services. Okay. Now, often retro may find that they have failed in that documentation and the claim manager has started that process, and then it's up to a claim manager whether to pull that back or not. But they're really told to watch for that documentation from the retro group.
Okay, Senator Kaiser has a question.
Thanks, Senator Mullet, Chair Mullet. Vicki, does L&I track the rate of return to work for retro program employers and keep an eye on that compared to the other self-insured or state fund employers?
No, actually, Senator, we don't. I think it's highly challenging. And I say that because when you think about the frequency of kept on salary in retro, which is now about 40%, it's difficult to know when did kept on salary actually change from I'm keeping you on salary while you're recovering, and now I've brought you back to work at a light duty job and moved on, hopefully back into permanent work with that employer. all of that, for example, is reported to ESD as wages. So you can't go to ESD data to confirm it. And what we might know is, when does the doctor say the worker's totally healed? But they could be back to work a couple of weeks before that. And other than people reporting it on their own, we don't really have valid data. So it's certainly a challenge. We do, and this gets into a bit of my data regarding return to work. We do have good data about the changes in return to work outcomes when our workers receive these early vocational recovery services. So I'll get into that a little bit as the other area that I wanted to talk about.
And one second, Representative Paulette has a question, and I'll say, just so folks in the committee understand, like, as a restaurant owner, I'm in the retro program for the Restaurant Association, and if you do successfully manage, like, how long your staff is out, like, you get a rebate back. Like, I've got rebates for like $1,500 or $1,800 at the end of the year, based on the fact that your employees have been safe. So there is a clear financial incentive for folks in retro programs to minimize. But Representative Paulette has a question.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time, so if you want to defer this question, but my question has to do with if we are getting that phone call to amongst the criteria are workers who have been injured and are concerned about independent medical exams and conflicting with views about their ability to return to work. And is that part of the criteria for ensuring that they get a prompt call?
So when you reference independent medical exams and some of the conflicting medical evidence that might be out there between the attending doctor, for example, and a consultant or an IME, those are happening much further down the claim process. So what we're talking about here is what's categorized as that. We call it the first call of the worker, meaning the one that is really triggered by them being off work. And I'm careful about saying that because, as I said before, I don't want to make it sound like a claim manager never calls a worker before them. That's not the case. This is the one that we measure their performance against. The conversation that you're talking about, Representative, a claim manager is always a resource to that injured worker, and they should feel free to call them. We also, in our referrals to the private sector for these cases with indications of long-term disability, which is often where you're going to get into this conflict of medical, a high percentage of those now have a vocational rehabilitation counselor attached. And one of the things that we are asking of those VRCs, is the short name for them, to do is both help a worker learn how to be a self-advocate, but also to help them through this complicated process and answer their questions, help them understand their resources. And we're learning now that particularly when it comes to issues around medical or around access to care, these VRCs are being tremendously helpful to those workers by helping them both through the process and to know who to call. So at that point, they have potentially a couple of resources then.
Thank you. Senator Saldana has joined us. Welcome, Senator Saldana. Okay, we are behind schedule. To try to keep us to finish on time, I think, Keenan, it's probably best to share with the committee the proposed committee addendum that was going to be attached to this report. So then there would be two motions. The first motion would be to adopt this proposed committee addendum, which I think we'll have staff share with the committee, and then the final action will be to, distribute this proposed final report. So do people want it a little bit larger? Can we do one more? This yeah, there we, okay. We'll give folks, this was from the executive committee. People can have a minute or two to kind of read through it. And then I'll do kind of a brief verbal explanation, and then the committee can ask any questions they have. But in short, I think what we hear from L&I is they prefer to do the, to measure against the contact at the, plus or minus 3 days before time loss is paid. But I think what our JLARC staff has discovered is that there is the data out there about how often people are contacted within 2 days. And that seems to be, from our staff analysis, the industry best practice that we think will minimize, how long people are out of work. Representative Orcutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just thought it might be appropriate to move adoption of the proposed committee addendum language. So I still move.
It's been moved by Representative Orcutt. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. We will have discussion. And Representative Hoff.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Help me, or you've done this in the past, so I just need a refreshing kind of comment. So we're proposing this comment language, and what if L&I just says, we're not going to do it? What kind of teeth does our recommendation hold, or what's the ultimate outcome of a recommendation that L&I may or may not adhere to?
I mean, our hope is that they would adhere to it. I think that we're trying to be as clear and transparent, I think, from the committee, that we do think it's important to gather this information. Representative Orcutt, did you want to respond as well?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we may not be able to do anything as JLARC to force them to do it, but we are all legislators, and any of us, if we feel that they are not responding and not reporting the way JLARC has recommended they do so, then any of us can put in a bill during the legislative session to make that a requirement.
Representative Hoff.
Yeah, and I understand that. It just I just think the efforts that our committee produces here are valid, and at some times, and this isn't the only report, but it's just the one that we have in front of us, that we just not well. It seems that some of the recommendations just don't get the same sense of urgency that we would expect. In any case, just a comment.
But I think in the executive committee discussion, Senator Wilson raised a similar concern to yours, but our hope was we're trying. That was our response at the executive committee. We are trying to get agencies to be as responsive as possible. And I think this is sort of in that theme. Are there any other questions about, and the proposed comment language, like we've tried as JLARC to avoid proposed comment language that we try to have it be bipartisan. This is signed by all 4 members of the executive committee. Representative Orcutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I am supporting this. I think it's important that we have this data. It gives us a sense of, or it gives us some real information as to whether or not L&I is progressing. If we see that they're not progressing, then that gives us cause to go back and ask questions why they're not progressing, what needs to be done differently, so that they do progress to get these calls done much more quickly. So I think this is a good committee addendum and would recommend a yes vote.
Okay, are there any other questions before we have staff call the roll on the adoption of the proposed committee comment language? Okay, we can go ahead and call the roll. Thank you.
This vote is for the motion to approve the addendum to the workers' compensation claims management for state-funded claims, the proposed final, the addendum to the proposed final report. Representative Fye.
Aye.
Representative Frame. Representative Frame.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Hasagawa.
Aye.
Representative Hoff.
Aye.
Representative Kraft. Not here. Senator Lovelet.
Aye.
Senator Mullet.
Aye.
Representative Orcutt.
Aye.
Representative Paulette.
Aye.
Senator Rivers.
Aye.
I don't believe Senator Saldana is here
He
yet.
is here now. He is here.
Senator Saldana.
Aye.
Thank you. Senator Short.
Aye.
Representative Stokesbury. Senator Wagoner.
Wagoner votes aye.
Senator Wilson.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes and no nays, and so the ayes have it, and the motion to approve the addendum has passed.
Okay, so the addendum has been adopted. We still now need, I would entertain a motion on adoption of the proposed final report. Representative Orcutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that the final report as amended be approved for distribution.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second from Representative Paulette. So there's been a motion and a second. We'll have staff please call the roll.
This vote is for the motion to approve for distribution the workers' compensation claims management for state-funded claims proposed final report. Representative Fye.
Aye.
Representative Frame.
Aye.
Senator Hasagawa.
Aye.
Representative Hoff.
Aye.
Representative Kraft. Senator Lovelet.
Aye.
Senator Mullet.
Aye.
Representative Orcutt.
Aye.
Representative Paulette.
Aye.
Senator Rivers.
Aye.
Senator Saldana.
Votes aye.
Senator Short.
Votes aye.
Thank you. Representative Stokesbury. Senator Wagoner.
Wagoner votes aye.
Senator Wilson.
Votes aye.
So there are 13 ayes, 0 nays. The ayes have it, and the motion to approve for distribution of the workers' compensation claims management for state-funded claims proposed final report is passed.
Okay, thank you. And I would say to Senator Kaiser, since she's on our committee today as the chair of Labor and Commerce on the Senate side, that I think the crux of the issue is, and I think this is what obviously the committee will have to deal with in the upcoming session, is whether there's value in reaching out to workers in those first couple days after there's a claim is filed. So there, it seems like there's a lot of that seems to be the real heart of the policy dispute. And so I think we'll have to get to the bottom of that legislature. I think the goal of this committee addendum is just keep tracking it while we try to figure out whether or not it's important, but keep tracking it so at least we know the information. But Senator Kaiser, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for holding this hearing today. It's very informative. I think the detail of whether or not a call is made in 2 days or 3 days or 2 weeks might not be as important as the outcome of the return to work and the reduction in long-term disability. And I think the outcomes of return to work are very valuable, and I would like to have a little more detail, to be honest, on the return to work. That's where we really need to make sure people are back in the workforce and productive again after a serious injury, time loss injury. So I'm not sure at the front end of the claim, you know that. You'll know that 6 months or 9 months in, whether we can get that individual back to the workforce. And that's what I would like to see focused on as well.
Well, and I think it would be helpful, and I don't know how we get this information, Ms. Kennedy, but how we are comparing to other states. We saw the improvement from 88 to 90%, but it's hard to know where that puts us in relation to other states. And so I think that would be helpful. And I think to Senator Kaiser's point, you had the second data point around, you know, how quickly people get back, and then a year later, are they still employed? It seems like the quicker they get back, the more they're employed, and how we're doing in that category relative to other states. Those two seem to be extremely relevant, I think, to the legislature of how we can determine whether the things we're trying to do to get people back to work are actually being really successful in making us a leader in the country, or whether it's putting us in the middle of the pack, I guess. Okay.
Senator, I don't know if you were interested in some feedback on that. Based on the various engagements that I have with folks from other jurisdictions, a solid return to work measure is something all jurisdictions struggle with, for some of the reasons that I've outlined here as far as state comparisons go. But I will tell you quite proudly that our data on return to work outcomes, even despite the pandemic, when we engaged vocational counselors early in the claim, was at a low before we put in several changes, both in the kind of services and how quickly they happen. I want to say we were at a low of return to work outcomes if you go back to 2011, 2012, of probably somewhere in the area of 10 to 12%. We're now over 40% on those outcomes when we engage those services. And that has had a huge influence on our long-term disability outcomes overall, actuarially calculated as hundreds of workers that are not moving into long-term disability if they were injured in 2019, 2018, 2020, compared to if they were injured in 2012. So there's a quick positive note recap for you.
No, that's excellent. And I'm on the State Investment Board with Joel Sachs, and I'm a huge Joel Sachs fan. I think he's done an excellent job with this agency in the 9 years I've been in the Senate. Okay, with that, we will move on. Thank you very much, staff. And we have Washington Compares. This does not need our approval. This was something that JLARC staff started doing, and we just thought it was an interesting snapshot. Ashley will share Washington Compares with the committee. And this is just for your information. We're not actually taking any motions on this.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Ashley Elliott, staff to the committee, and I'm here to present our third annual update for how Washington compares. And as Senator Mullet mentioned, this is just a briefing report. It's not a performance audit. So a little bit of background. As I mentioned, this is our third year of doing this, and it's a compilation of measures from national data sets that shows how Washington compares to other states in 35 measures. And our intent with this report is to make these public data sources more accessible and interactive. And as I mentioned, we have 35 measures that we've divided into 5 broad categories: population, economy, health, and the environment, taxes and revenue, government spending and debt, education costs and spending, and public assistance, transportation, and public safety spending. As I mentioned, all of this data is interactive in Tableau dashboards, and I'm going to open up the report and walk you through one of those dashboards. But before I do that, we do have a one-page summary of all of these measures, and all the measures are listed with where Washington ranks in that measure, the actual measure itself, so like population, and if this is an increase or a decrease from the previous year. So I'm going to go ahead and open the report. And again, that one-page overview is here on this first page. We also do have a little video to walk you through how to use the dashboards, which is what I'm going to do in a moment. I'm going to start with just our population dashboard. Let's see if it will load. All of these dashboards are laid out exactly the same. In the upper left, you have the measure itself. So in this case, population, and the year of the data. In this case, it's the calendar year 2020. Directly below that, you have a table of all of this information. So, for population, California is at the top and it goes all the way down to, I think it's Wyoming, is at the very bottom. Washington falls right around number 13 here in population, and you can select this table or a state from the map to view a 5-year trend of the data. So in this case, 5 years of population in Washington, and you can select any state in the map or on the table to view that 5-year trend. They're available for all of the states.
And I would say for the committee, JLARC staff, some of the where you're ranked is going to be, subjective of what you consider to be. So obviously infant mortality, you want to be ranked high, which we are, so that's good. That one we can probably all agree on. But then state expenditures per capita, probably some people would rather us be ranked high and others would rather us be ranked low. And so these things are just, you really have to look at each line item on its own to determine whether number 1 or number 50 is your preferred outcome for each line item. It takes a little bit of, it's up to your individual reading of the report, I would say.
Yeah, and so let's see. I will be back next spring in 2022 to present another update. And that concludes our prepared remarks. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ashley? Okay, it's very, Senator Saldana.
Oh, just the easy softball. I mean, Ashley, when you did this the team did this work, is there anything that was surprising to you or that stood out that you want to share?
You might notice there's a couple incidents where our rank changed, but if you look at the actual measure, the measure itself is pretty on trend for the past 5 years. So sometimes the rankings, depending on what other states do, moves us. But if you look at the actual 5-year trend, you'll see that, it's pretty on trend for what Washington has done in the past.
I would highlight everyone in the community to go to the average annual or the percent change in in-state tuition and fees of public universities, where we are 49th, meaning we actually had a decrease over the 5-year time horizon. That's one we can all be proud of. Okay, with that, we move on to our last item of business. This is the pro study questions.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a quick question?
Oh, Senator Osgood, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm looking at the one pager under government spending and debt. And when it talks about federal grants per capita, we're below the midpoint. Can you give me a little bit more analysis about what you think is causing that? I presume that means we're receiving less per capita from the federal government than the median.
I can look into what the median is. All I can say right now on that, because we do pull all this from federal data sets, is that in 2020, we were 33rd and we've increased. So we went from just over $1,900 of federal grants per capita in 2020, or excuse me, that's not the right year. So this next year we received 2,265. So the amount of money we're getting in grants has increased per capita, but our population has also increased. So, but I can look into it a little bit more.
Okay. No, I was not necessary. I was just curious. Thanks.
You can bug your congressional representatives, Senator Hasegawa. So we get our fair share of our federal tax dollars. Okay, with that, seeing no other questions, the last is the proposed study question. UW and Seattle Children's Consultation Referral Lines for Mental and Behavioral Health. And I think we have Casey and Amanda to go over the proposed study questions.
Good morning, Chair Mullet and members of the committee. I'm Amanda Edrick and joined by my colleague, Casey Radistitz, and we are staff to the committee. Today, we will present the proposed study questions for an upcoming study of mental and behavioral health services offered by the University of Washington and Seattle Children's Hospital. Unlike the other presentations you heard today, we are at the very beginning of the study, and this presentation is a preview of the questions we will be studying for the next year and a half. In 2020, the legislature directed JLARC to review 4 mental and behavioral health programs. The programs offer consulting to healthcare providers about patient treatment plans, along with mental and behavioral health referrals for youth and teens. 3 of the services are phone lines for healthcare providers across Washington to call and receive advice about patients they are treating. Providers can call for free on behalf of their patients and receive mental and behavioral health consultation from University of Washington psychiatrists. The psychiatrists advise providers regarding diagnostic clarification, medication adjustment, or treatment planning for patients. The 4th service is a phone line for families to call and receive referrals to mental and behavioral health services for children and teens. To offer these services, the Healthcare Authority contracts with the University of Washington and Seattle Children's, who then administer the phone lines. Casey will provide more detail about each service in the next couple slides.
Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Washington runs 2 consultation lines for healthcare providers. The services allow providers such as doctors and nurses to call and receive advice from a licensed psychiatrist about patients they are treating. The Partnership Access Line for moms is available to providers treating pregnant and postpartum patients. For example, an obstetrician seeking advice for how to treat a patient for depression or pregnancy loss can call and speak with a licensed psychiatrist. The Psychiatry Consultation Line is a phone consultation service available to providers treating adult patients. Primary care providers, as well as those working in emergency departments or municipal correctional facilities and evaluation and treatment facilities, can call and receive advice for how to treat their patients. Seattle Children's Hospital offers 1 phone consultation line for healthcare providers and 1 mental health referral service for families. The Partnership Access Line allows providers such as doctors, physician's assistants, or nurses treating patients under 19 years old to consult with a licensed psychiatrist about mental and behavioral health treatment options. For example, a provider may call for advice about a specific diagnosis, medication adjustment, or a treatment plan. In contrast to the 3 lines I just discussed for healthcare providers, the mental health referral service is available to help families locate mental and behavioral health services in their communities. And staff at Seattle Children's operate the referral service. And here's just a quick example of how it can work. A parent calls in and staff at Children's takes down their information, such as the location and type of service they need. And then the specialist follows up with a list of providers in the community with availability and fitting the family's needs. And that leads to the 4 proposed study questions for this project, which are all on screen. Briefly, the first question asks what services are offered, when and to whom they're available, and whether the lines are meeting call demand. The second is about how HCA, UW, and Children's promote and oversee the programs. The third relates to caller satisfaction and whether there are disparities in call satisfaction. And finally, the 4th asks if the programs have increased access to mental and behavioral health care and whether there are disparities in access.
As I mentioned, we're still in the early stages of this project. We'll be back in December 2022 to present our preliminary report, and our proposed final report will be in January 2023. That concludes our prepared remarks, and here is our contact information. We're happy to answer any questions.
So the bill was passed in the 2020 session, right?
Yes.
And then it says it's everything that was referred from July 1st of 2019 through the end of this calendar year. So when the bill passed, did we expect a change in like the amount of, did it provide additional funding for the programs? Was that the point of the, I don't remember the bill specifically, I guess, like.
Bill authorizing our study.
Well, but that was a section of the bill, right? That wasn't the heart of the bill. The heart of the bill was, I think, support for these phone referral lines, I guess, right? And so I'm just trying to get a sense, was there a big uptick in the use of these lines after the passage of the bill 2728?
Yep, Senator Mullet, the Pal for Moms and mental health referral service programs were both pilot programs before the end of this past session. And the funding model for these programs changed in 2020, and our study is a part of that bill, but we are not analyzing the new funding model. We were directed to analyze the patient success at addressing issues related to mental and behavioral health access.
We have a few questions. Representative Frame, and then Senator Loveland, and then Senator Short. Representative Frame.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to fill in some detail there, but I think Amanda just did a great job. We did change the funding model to have insurance providers help to share in the responsibility of funding and not just have it be Medicaid, but that is not the point of the study. So, but your memory was right, Senator Mullet. There was a change in the funding model in the 2020 bill.
Okay, Senator Loveland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm wondering about the information gathering you're able to do from callers themselves, because my observation is that there's quite a deal of disconnect between the people who are receiving services and what it's like for us, I think, to analytically look at that service model, because there's a varying degree of acuity in mental health cases. And so the more mentally ill somebody is, the harder it is for them to access these services, even if on face value to us, they look like they're easy to access. So I guess I'm just wondering who you were trying to solicit that type of information from.
All right, thank you for that question. That's a really good question. I think, how we will collect our data is something that we will be exploring over the course of our field work in the next 14 months. But I think one point I would like to clarify is that 3 of these lines are meant for healthcare providers. So they are for the doctors and nurses to call and receive advice about the patients they're treating for, treatment plans or medication reviews or the like. And so some of our data collection will likely be to those providers because they are the primary users of the programs. And then we also have the mental health referral service, which is targeted towards families in the communities. And that will be another type of data collection that we will likely engage in over the course of our field work. Does that help with?
I'll have some follow-up, but I'll email you.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This may not be germane to the specific study questions, but what I'm learning, and you're probably all learning it too in your districts, is this just the challenge of enough mental health professionals. And I'm kind of interested to know whether or not the ability of people to be served in these programs, if that may be a component or an additive question that you may have as you visit with all of the entities as part of the study.
That's a very good point, and to the extent that we can explore sort of broader mental health capacity and its relationship to the study questions, that's something we will do.
Okay, Senator Osgood.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I'm curious about, I thought somebody would ask a question, but the integration of these programs with the 988 bill that we passed, and how there's some claims that the 988 bill was underfunded because of some amendments that were passed. And if there will be cost savings if these programs integrate into that 988 system to make up for that perceived deficiency.
Thank you for your question. I'm not familiar with the 988 study. I don't know if that's something that you can weigh in on more, Keenan.
It's not a study. It's actually a very comprehensive. I mean, it's like a global approach to dealing with behavioral health and substance abuse issues on a referral call line. And I was just wondering if, how much do these programs integrate, and will there be savings as a result of that? And will one inform the other in the program design or implementation? And that
And
sort
it
of
sounds like Senator Hasagawa has identified a future JLARC study. But go ahead. Sorry, Casey. Then we'll go to Representative Frame.
That's something we can look into.
Yeah. I mean, I think Senator Hasagawa was bringing up a very good point. I think that the bill that just passed the session, the 988, is kind of a much larger, more holistic approach to what this bill is dealing with. And so there could be.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in there real quickly, Senator, we do have a study on the 988 one too. So we'll, that's a good point to bring up, how they might have some interaction between the two. Thanks for flagging that for us.
Representative Frank.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just with your indulgence, I'll share the tiniest bit of context. And this is, I'm the former chair of the Children and Youth Behavioral Health Work Group, from which the PALS line pilot projects are originated. And I think, as Keenan might have mentioned earlier, at this point, like 3 out of 4 of the lines are provider to provider call lines, whereas the 988 is like a consumer direct call crisis response. So one of the lines there might be alignment on one of those lines, Senator Hasagawa, but I think with the other ones, it's a little bit different. Certainly, I think a lot of folks do call when they're dealing with crisis, but I think that provider to provider piece, I was partially in the 988 conversation, more on the tax part than the crisis response piece, but I don't think it was really intended to be provider to provider conversation. So maybe that 4th line, we could investigate a little bit, team, to see if there's alignment there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right. Is there any other questions? If not, I think that will conclude our meeting. So folks know that Representative Paulette is going to be the new chair of JLARC starting. We will officially pass the gavel to Representative Paulette, and at the next meeting in July. We do 2-year stints that rotate. I will throw out for the committee that we spent a lot of time on the executive leadership team. I've chaired LEAP. LEAP rotates between the 4 corners. A lot of committees leave it up to the committee to elect who's going to be the chair. We're currently like JTC, where it stays based on whoever's in majority control. But I think that is one of the things that I have been very public that I'm willing to have Senator Wilson take my spot in July of 23 as chair, but we would actually have to formally change the rules of JLARC so it would pass, so we as a committee could elect amongst ourselves who the next chair would be in July of 23. I'm fully supportive of Representative Paulette taking over next month, but I will say that's an agenda item that this committee can discuss going forward, and we will have between now and July of 23 to figure that one out. But I've been very publicly vocal that I would support that change if the committee decided to go that route. But with that, I think we are concluded, and we will see everyone July 21st. Is that right, Keenan? Is that our next meeting?
Yes, July 21st. And we have an I-900 hearing that we'll also be having on that same day. And just as a heads up for what's going to be on our agenda for the regular JLARC meeting, the 2 reports planned at this time are the annual tax preference reports and the annual report on the use of local lodging taxes.
Excellent. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Everybody.